I've devoted most of my academic and research career to understanding mental health and wellness. But as a fellow human being, I also know that being a psychologist offers absolutely no protection from the basic truth that it's hard being human. In fact, the single most remarkable fact about human experience is how hard it is for us to be happy, and I mean genuinely happy. And I know the numbers, knowing that we're in the midst of an opioid epidemic, we're in the midst of an obesity epidemic, and we have a growing epidemic of depression and anxiety. And I know the numbers showing that happiness has been on the decline in the United States over the last decade. And I know that in our modern world, we have more resources now available to us than at any time point in human history. And so, you'd think we'd be happier. But the data suggest otherwise. I believe that there's something about our basic apparatus, our very nature as human beings, that makes genuine happiness hard to come by and living life hard to do. And I'm a case in point. If you knew this guy back in 2009, you would have thought he had everything going for him and every possible reason to be happy. I was hitting my stride in my career, and my office walls were covered with plaques and awards. I was married with 3 healthy kids, a home in the suburbs, and I even had 2 dogs in tow. I had my health, wide-ranging interests, and plenty of family support. So looking back, I had every possible reason to be happy. Now, I'm not exactly sure of the day, but some point in 2009, I woke up one morning with this thought: I hate my life, I hate my life, I hate my life, I hate my life. Echoing through my brain. And at first, I tried to dismiss it. I even tried to ignore it. As a psychologist, I knew that not all thoughts should be trusted or believed. And I had the tools to disarm this menacing thought. But nothing seemed to work. And I remember saying to myself, "Healer, heal thyself," but I couldn't even do that. Now I checked in. I knew I wasn't depressed. I knew I wasn't suicidal. Well, maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis. After all, I fell within the 40-something age bracket. But the thought hating your life is not part of any midlife crisis that I certainly knew about. And so I did what came naturally to me. I isolated myself in any way I possibly could. And I was literally running from my life in the hope of running into happiness. And then the unexplained heart arrhythmias happened, even though I had a clean bill of health. And at first, I thought, oh, this is strange. But in hindsight, I believe my heart was trying to tell me something. But back then, I had no idea what that might be. I really didn't want to know. I wasn't in a place to look because I was afraid of what I might find and what it might all mean. All of this led me into what I can only call a dark night of the soul. Now, mystics, seekers, and gurus from various traditions often speak of this dark night as a transformative moment. But for me, it felt like stepping into a mucky, stinky swamp. And I certainly didn't want to go there. Who would? I had enough muck in my heart and in my head. Thank you very much. But I was tired of running. And with all the courage I could muster, I stopped running. I turned around and took an honest look at my life. But this is hard for us to do. And I'm here to talk about why that is so. And I'd like to start off with the brain. It has many functions, but one of its main jobs for all of us is to produce thoughts in the form of words and images, fleeting, without form or substance. But in the modern world, we lose track of this. We take our thoughts so seriously. We take them literally. We buy into them, hook, line, and sinker, and swallow them even though they're not helpful to us. We mistake our beliefs and our thoughts for reality. And we literally get trapped in what I would call fusion with our thoughts. And we do this even when they're unhelpful. So looking back at my life, I knew I was buying into and fused with a whole train of thoughts. And as I stepped back, I discovered that some of them were inside of the "I hate my life" message that was pounding in my head. Like the thoughts were something like this: John, you need to do what's expected of you because otherwise people will disapprove. You better follow the rules because what you care about really doesn't matter. And honestly, John, you really don't matter all that much without those awards and plaques hanging on your wall. And it was this set of thoughts, along with fear, that kept me literally stuck and far from the life I wished to lead. Now, it wasn't always this way. If we could imagine our early hominid ancestors, and we could divide this room in half, so everybody from the middle over here, your group has no capacity for language and cognition, no ability to speak with meaning and respond with understanding, no signs, gestures, drawings, zippo. You all on the other side of the room, you have the capacity to speak with meaning and listen with understanding. You can use words, symbols, gestures, paintings, and drawings. Now, those on the left, some of you in the front, and I'll pick on you, you all head west. Some of you hang back and you see the predators, you hear the screams and the carnage as your friends become lunch. That night around the fire, you with your other cave mates fight over the scraps of food you may have, and some of you might even wander over to that empty part of the cave where your friends once slept and take their hides, their tools, and their mates. Next day, some of you go west, a few of you see it, they don't come back. In short, your group gets smaller and smaller and smaller. You on the right, the fortunate ones in the front row, and there's nothing bad about the front row, but I'm going to pick on you. You head west, a few of you see them go, and you hear the screams, you see the carnage, and you watch as your friends become dinner. Now back at the campfire, you sit around, what are you going to talk about? You're going to be talking about what happened going west, the dangers of going west, about the predators. Some of you might even talk about, off in the east, this wonderful bounty we found. There are berries and there's other things that we could use and resources. Maybe we should go there tomorrow. The point is, language and cognition, that thinking machine between your ears, evolved as a useful tool. Its purpose was to keep us safe and alive. That's it. But in the modern world, we don't see our thoughts as useful or not, or as tools. We treat them as who we are. We literally identify with them, and then we tell stories about ourselves around them, even when they're self-limiting. And we all have stories. I am worthless is a story. I'm not enough is a story. I'm stupid, I'm wrong, I'm fat. They're all stories with predictable beginnings and predictable endings. And we listen to these stories even when they don't serve us well. But it wasn't always this way. If you go back in time, most of us, in fact all of us, came into this world more or less the same way. There was a you there with two eyes looking out in the world, but you had no words, no experiences, no way to speak about that world. All you knew is that you're here. You're here now. But very quickly that changes as we collect experiences. And in a way, we're like this vessel. Life is continually adding experiences to that vessel, that you that's always been there. And even modern neuroscience teaches us that the nervous system is additive, not subtractive. That means what goes in stays in, short of brain insult or injury. So let's try a little example and experiment just to see. Little Miss Muffet sat on a... Now, when's the last time you used the word tuffet? Like, hey, honey, why don't you pull up a tuffet and let's hang out for a while, right? But it's in there, right? And some of you might be thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about. And that's because in your history, you don't have that nursery rhyme in there. But I can guarantee you, it's in there now. And some of you might even be telling stories around this, like, oh man, I am stupid for not knowing the word tuffet. Right? And the deal is this, is that the only constant in your life and mine has been that vessel. What's changed are the experiences that have been added to it. And our mind takes those experiences and concocts stories around this, and then we buy into them even though they don't serve us well and they're self-limiting. For me, my story was I'm not enough. And when those experiences that we collect are painful, we'll do the next thing. We will struggle with them and try to get away from them and push them out. In short, we avoid. And I'm here to tell you that there's no healthy way to avoid your thoughts or feelings. But we do it because we've learned that control works so well in the outside world that naturally it ought to work well inside our skin. But the same rules don't apply. And we know this. There's no on and off switch for thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions happen. They're not choices. And if there's one mantra that sums up the literature, it would be this: if you don't want it, you've got it. And many of us, though, try to run from ourselves, and that creates a whole host of other problems. And it's supported by a culture, especially in the West, that I call the culture of feel-goodism. And the message inside this culture is this: it's normal to be happy. Pain isn't normal. In fact, it's a problem. So if you're in pain, emotional, psychological, or physical, you better find a way to fix it. And bam, the trap door is shut as soon as that happens, because now you're set up to be at war with what you think and what you feel. And all of that effort and attention takes us out of the present moment where our lives are lived. And actually, this is something that was confirmed by a pair of Harvard psychologists. They went out and they studied our happiness in relation to where our mind was, and what they found was that not being present is absolutely disastrous for your happiness and your life. In fact, they found that 50% of the time, our minds are not here and now. They're off wandering in thought about the past or the future. And we get stuck in the past. So imagine driving your car, and I told you, you must keep your eyes fixed on the rearview mirror at all times. What would happen? You would likely crash. And that's what happens when we fuse with thoughts about past wounds, regrets, difficult memories long ago. We crash and we crash again. But we also confuse with thoughts about the future. You and I can imagine a future that hasn't happened. We can imagine tomorrow or even 10 years from now. But what we miss is that the thought about the future is not the future, it's actually a thought. And what the Harvard researchers showed, the more that we mind wander, our happiness tanks. By contrast, the more we're present in the now, our happiness increases. So think about that the next time you're doing something yucky like cleaning the bathroom toilet. Watch where your mind is. Now, if we let all these processes go unchecked, we may one day wake up with no sense of what we care about. No direction, no compass bearing in our life. And that can also be disastrous, especially when life offers us forks in the road, because it will. And our tendency as human beings is to avoid pain and to seek pleasure. And our tendency here is to take the easy path, even though the path, say, to the right, might be more life-affirming. And we do it because we get a honeymoon from the pain. But if we keep taking easy street, eventually we may wake up one day with the worst type of pain of them all, which is the pain of an unlived life. And we end up feeling literally stuck. This is the system. This is the system we're up against. 6 basic processes that research shows accounts for a good deal of human suffering. We fuse with unhelpful thoughts, literally buying into them. We become attached to the stories that are in our history, everything we've collected. We then avoid and struggle with the stuff we don't like very much that's in our vessel. And then we lose contact with the present moment. We become directionless, we lose our bearings, and then one day we might find ourselves stuck and far from the kind of life that we really care about. So what can we do about this? Well, perspective is everything. We all have a lot of experience with that in the world around us. Well, you can do the same with your thoughts and emotions. And the cool thing about that is, if you can watch them and look at them, you can't be them. So with fusion, there is no perspective. The thoughts are in your face. When we diffuse, we get a perspective. We step back and look at our thoughts. And a powerful way to do this diffusion, is simply to put your thoughts on paper. And you can always tell if you have a thought if you can write it down. And when you do that, you will see that all thoughts are made of the same stuff. I hate my life is just as much of a thought as I am a banana. When you write it down, it's words, letters, and ink. And the real question we all should be asking ourselves when we look at those words, the letters, and the ink, are those thoughts helpful or not in leading us into the life we wish to lead? Crazy, I know, but that's a thought too. right? The second thing here is instead of asking ourselves, like, and buying into the stories we have about who we are, let's take the who out of it and come back to these other two words and a simple I am. The I am, that vessel that was there before the trauma got dropped in, before the sweet moments got dropped in, before the mundane. There was a you there, I am. And from this perspective, we can choose how we relate to the stuff in our vessel. The science shows that instead of being at war with this stuff, which is not helpful, we can learn to bring kindness and compassion to whatever it is that we carry. Just like you might hold a tiny kitten or a little puppy or even a newborn infant. You hold it with tenderness and care. We can do the same things for the stuff that we carry, and that can have a profound effect on our happiness. Instead of turning away from our lives, we can actually open up and allow what's happening anyway, because it is. It's part of your history. Now, you've probably seen this before, these like little toys are actually one of the only empirically supported party favors that I've seen in the annals of psychology, right? And with this little toy, if you've ever seen this, what we do is we push in. I found myself literally stuck in a trap. And I tried to get out the way I got in, and it was suffocating, and it was tight and squeezing, until I realized to stop running, and I decided to lean in. And when I leaned into my life, I found that I had wiggle room that I didn't have before, and I actually could get unstuck. So this little party toy teaches us that instead of running, we need to learn to lean in. Instead of being lost in the future or the past, we can train ourselves to come back to the present, right now. And the practice is very simple. You can do it with the breath anytime, anywhere. And the science shows it's enormously beneficial for our lives, and that pair of Harvard researchers shows that the more you're present, the more your happiness will increase. And being present is important for another reason, because that's where you can act to make changes in your life, is now, now, now. And this will help when you feel directionless and lost. If you don't have a sense of values, learning to defuse, stop struggling, stop buying into the stories, be present, will help you get a sense of what you care about. So knowing your values, your compass bearings, why you're here. And that's important when we decide to make decisions and we face those forks in the road. And what I mean here is not morality, it's what you care about. And what you care about is where the magic happens, not staying in our little box in our comfort zone. In the last piece, instead of being unstuck, we can move to being, instead of being stuck, we can move to being unstuck. And the way we do that is with our behavior, with our mouth, hands, and feet. And this is something we have 100% control over. Thank you.